Welcome back to another episode of the FuelHer Energy podcast, where we share the inspiring yet untold stories of women in energy and business. I'm your host, Jamisia McCalman. You're now discovering me for the first time. That's cool. Join my community. Follow me, Jamisia.gy or Jamisia McCalman everywhere. Now, of course, we want you to be part of this Fuel Her Energy community. So if you're going to reshare, use the hashtag Fuel Her Energy podcast. Listen, everything that you're seeing, it looks nice. I know, but it took a village. We want to say thank you to our partners, our sponsors, starting with ExxonMobil Guyana, our community partner. Thank you to Anson McCall Limited, the Always and Always Foam brands. Thank you to Praetorian Security, Morgan's Investment Inc., Access Investment and Consultancy, Global Healthcare Supplies, and Dalia Lartista. Thank you all so much for supporting this journey and investing in women, not just in Guyana, but all across the globe, who will look at this podcast and take something away from it. Now, I know the big question: who's going to top our first guest? This one is very close to me. She is someone whom I've known for most of my teenage years into my adult years. She's had an impact in my life and so many others, in St. Lucia, in Guyana, and now in her workplace. She is none other than Industrial Hygienist Rochelle Maxius Benn.
I am an industrial hygienist at ExxonMobil Guyana. I focus on employee health and well-being and develop programs that protect my colleagues. I am one of 1,400 women employed in Guyana's oil and gas industry.
As a local content analyst at ExxonMobil Guyana, I work directly with the local business community. I focus on the numbers, helping Guyana's economy and people benefit from oil and gas. This is what's possible.
Learn more about Rochelle and Ashley's stories and about ExxonMobil's commitment to empowering women in the workplace at www.exxonmobil.com/what is possible.
Rochelle, how you doing?
Girl, it is so good to be here. It is so good to be here. I don't know if this is a good evening or a good day or a good what, but
hello, it's
greetings.
fine.
Hello.
So
and thank you for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. It's been a while since we've connected this way. And so listen,
Oh, God.
and to my viewers, if you see me coming in like this, just know I'm very comfortable with Rochelle. Her voice, her spirit, her presence. I think it's an honor to be here in her presence.
Yes.
Rochelle, it's an honor to have you here.
It's an honor to
today.
be here. I was just telling you before we started, I am so proud of you. I am super proud of you. We've both come a far way, and it's good to sit and have this conversation right now.
But you know, you spoke about us coming far away, and I was preparing for this interview. I was reminiscing on where we started, where we met, and it's in Love and Faith.
Yes.
And I was cracking up because I remember it was the youth arm, Joshua Generation Youth Ministry. We were talking about resuming the psalmist team, the worship team,
yes.
and every service, I'm behind you. Rochelle, when are we going to start? When are we going to start? And you're like, I love how persistent you are.
Oh my God.
And I just had to crack up at that moment. But what really soothed my heart and my spirit is that you took me under your wing. You took the other young people under your wing, and you mentored us, and you were committed to the task. You said, this is what I'm appointed to do. You took it and you ran with that, and you did not take the post for granted. And it made me think about, is this who she always was? This always Rochelle as a young lady, as someone who has siblings? Like, how what was Rochelle like growing up? Because I don't think we've ever discussed that.
No, we haven't. So you know, I was born in Linden. I spent most of my childhood there, like toddler stage. When we were 11 years old, the entire family migrated to St. Lucia. And life and self-awareness and who you are as a person, I think that period of my life was really shaped around that time. But I don't think that my self-awareness peaked until probably marriage. And this is, you're talking about the fact that I mentored you guys and took you guys under my wings. And it's only in retrospect I'm able to see that that's what I was doing.
Wow.
In the moment, it was very instinctive, very, very natural. Like, I am observing that these young people gravitate to me. I'm easy to talk to. You're telling me your business and I can't. But somehow the Lord has given me wisdom during that time to really navigate around different situations, to be confidential in every way. I did not realize that I was mentoring. Who I was as a child, I have to look at my report cards to see who I was as a child.
Talkative.
So listen, I got talkative, but it's interesting because my older sister in my adult stage, she came and she brought a report card to me. And she said, if you wonder how you are now, read what your teacher said to you.
Yeah.
And what I read was, the students are drawn to her.
Wow.
Rochelle has lots of friends.
Wow.
And she appreciates the attention she gets from them. I was like, so besides the talkative and whatever, what captured my attention, the children are drawn to her. And growing up, I realized that I would sit in a building and then all the people can sit around me and we can skim with the whole night. And I found that I took that personality with me throughout life. But then somehow the Lord had my speech sharpened in such a way that now I was mentoring, I was offering advice, and I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing until marriage. It's like you become so self-aware of your purpose and what's happening around you and what role you play in those spaces, you know?
You know, it's funny that you said that, because it's just last week, in my own personal space, I just pulled out my phone and I was recording and talking about purpose. And many of us are walking in our purpose and we don't realize it. While there are others who realize it and they mismanage it. But for the ones who are walking in it and they don't realize it in that moment, but then life is just like a 360, a full circle moment, and like you didn't realize that that's what you were doing all that time. You didn't even know there's a thing called purpose. You know. But what I want to talk about is that transition from Guyana to St. Lucia, and then St. Lucia back to Guyana. How was that transition for you?
That transition for me, again, I walked through a lot of my life just not being self-aware. You're just living in the moment. You're just having fun. You're just doing you. But in retrospect, I think that transition had different seasons and periods where it was rough, because moving at that pivotal an important point of my life, you find that you now have to disconnect from what you're used to. You have to disconnect from friends that you know, and then you have to go to a whole different environment. So when I started school in St. Lucia, it was secondary school at the time, and then it was like, I don't know anybody, the culture is different, they mixed patois and English, and so you'd see a St. Lucia coming to you, hey guys, so what are you doing like that? And I'm like, I understood the English until that little piece of patois. So it was a struggle transitioning into that culture. And then eventually I got used to it. You got used to it. And then you're like, okay, so you're finished. You write CXC. What's next? And then all of a sudden the talks about university came into the play. Of course, there's a UE branch in St. Lucia, but it wouldn't offer all of the courses that you're interested in. So the talk was to come back to Guyana. And so no, it was another disconnect. You're uprooting yourself from a culture. You've embedded yourself in. You're accustomed to that. You have friends. You have your family. My parents, I was now disconnecting from them to come to Guyana. And not just Guyana, but Georgetown. People take this for granted. If you spent your childhood in Linden, Guyana, and then you're coming to Georgetown, Guyana.
It's like a whole different country.
It's a different country.
Yeah.
Let me just put that out there. It's a whole different country. And so the readjustment when I came back to Guyana, it was like me being in a foreign country and having to reestablish myself and having to get accustomed to a whole different culture, because the culture in Georgetown is very different to Linden. And so there were rough transitions in my life. And during that period, when I came back to Guyana to settle in Georgetown, you met people, and because I came into that space very naive, very excited about life. But you grew up very sheltered, and so you think that everybody should clap at everything that you do that's good. You know, as children, oh, look at her. I came in very naive, very fragile, and so a lot of disappointments were faced when I came back to Guyana. You encounter people and you realize you're in a real life where not everybody's supposed to like you. Not everybody's going to gravitate to you. Not everybody's going to have an appreciation for who you are as a person. And so I've been told a lot of things. I've been treated all sorts of ways. And that really broke me. And it eventually set me down a very dark path mentally, right? And I struggled when I came back here. But there is so much... There's so much to talk about when we think about seasons in our lives. Yes. And I hope that the conversation gets right around to seasons and how important they are, because when you talk about my transition and how it was, there were good moments.
Yes.
There were good moments, but there were trying moments as well.
But as you're talking also, you spoke about that lack of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And it has me questioning, how did that lack of self-awareness affect you? Because I think sometimes when you're not aware of who you are, you're not aware, you're just going around, just flaunting your
just doing what comes naturally.
It can work against you. Yes. So how was that lack of self-awareness for working against you for how many years?
Yeah.
Because you as you said, you just learned self-awareness.
I think there needs to be another podcast coming out of this, especially for young wives, young women who are now trying to establish themselves in this world. But that's lack of self-awareness. You tend to take on the opinions of people when you lack that awareness of who you are. You understand? And you walk through life thinking that this must be who I am. If you think, if you're treating me like, if you're saying this, that, and it's like that light bulb comes on based on what you tell me, right? Because I didn't have that assurance for myself. I didn't have that affirmation or a source of affirmation. Even my relationship with God was just like, I grew up in church, I'm automatically saved. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I must be making it to heaven because my parents are pastors. You know, I grew up in the church. You know, I'm aware of the word of God. I talk with the Lord. I see my talents being formed and shaped, and I'm being refined. And this is the area I'm going in. I never strayed, so I must be going to heaven, right? So there was that disconnect too. You haven't registered that life is happening and that seasons are changing, and that, you know, what you see yourself as, it's what people have, you know, people have imposed their opinions on you. You know, they've inflicted a lot of pain based on the things that they say, and you just automatically take that as your truth. And I carried that around for a while, thinking that I'm a failure, I wouldn't amount to much. There's nothing that could come out of this. I'm very different from my siblings. I'm very different from the people around me. So,
but we're all different, and it makes sense that you said that you were just a churchgoer, essentially. Yeah. Because you spoke about you didn't know who you are. Committed. You didn't know who you are, but also as Christians we say whose we are. Mm-hmm. Because when we know who we are in Him, it changes us, and you could say whatever you want about me.
I am. Mm-hmm.
I know who I am, and so, well, I'm happy that awareness happened. It doesn't matter how late it happened, and you spoke about carrying that with you, the impact of that, of the words that people said, and I've heard you talk a lot about imposter syndrome. Now let's talk about, you're back in Guyana.
Yes.
This transition is transitioning.
Yes.
It's not giving what it's supposed to give,
Not
as we
giving what
would
it's
say.
supposed to give.
And so now you're in university,
Mm-hmm.
going through a journey that is supposed to be 4 years.
Yeah.
And here you are, failing forward. You're starting, you're stopping.
Yeah.
Girl, tell me about that, because I know there are persons who started and they're like, that will figure itself out.
Yes,
But
yeah.
how was that for you?
And I'm happy you raised that, because that's a story that I talk very boldly about now. But before, who's proud of failures? Who's proud of quitting University of Guyana? I quit it twice.
But Roche, you know what? I remember being at the cultural center. I think I was helping you with makeup, something, do your graduation photos.
Oh, yes.
Right? And it reminded me, as I was thinking back on the moment during this week, I was like, it's so often you see people and you don't know what they have faced behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And it made me admire you even a bit more, Rochelle, because of that resilience.
Oh, yes.
And you
I
walk,
remember
you,
that.
it,
Oh, my
it is,
God.
you know, they say, do not walk around and look as though what you're going through. And for a moment, no one would have known unless you
No
said
one,
something,
yeah.
because you showed up. You showed up every time you had to show up,
Yeah.
to mentor, to worship, to teach, whatever. You showed up, as I started by saying you were committed.
Yeah.
But here you are going through. You're being tried left, right, and center. Oh my gosh.
And you're bringing that back to my memory, and I'm getting so emotional that on that time when I graduated and I rented my gown and I was taking my photos, you were there indeed. She was there in the background, and she was
How
just
to
my hype
pose.
woman, giving me all the poses and stuff. And during that time, indeed, my mind was, I'm finally here.
Yeah, you crossed the finish line.
And you know what? I was so tired. I was so tired because my mental health was rocking back and forth with everybody's thoughts of me, because I didn't have self-awareness. I didn't know who I was. I was very fragile. You understand? And then I was away from my parents.
Yeah.
And so your root, you feel as though somebody...
It's shaken.
Oi.
Mm-hmm.
You were uprooted from your environment, that place where you could be yourself and people just love who you are no matter what. And you're in a space, the real world, where people would look at you and judge you immediately. People would look at you and compare you to others. People would look at you and then just, project their own insecurities
Yes.
on you, right? They would draw conclusions about you. And those things took a toll on me. And I believe there were seeds that were planted in my mind that really grew some oak trees.
Wow.
And that became who I was as a person. And I must believe that I won't get far in this.
So your identity became the words of mere man.
Oh, yes.
How-
Very much so.
How were you able to overcome that, Rochelle?
I had to talk about it. Because there was a battle going on in my mind that nobody knew. I used to hear voices. I used to hear, my room was always dark, but the light was on. And then it's like undiagnosed depression. These days you have to be diagnosed. But girl, I was going through it. You understand? And I was feeding myself with more negative thoughts, because the tree, it grew fruits. And I was eating the fruits constantly. It was just a very toxic space in my head concerning who I was as a person. And this might sound simple to people, but a lot of young people are going through the same things. And there is just nobody to talk to. I remember breaking down in a lecturer's office. I walked in, that's when I went back to UG the second time. And the Lord spoke to me concerning this. He said, finish, you will see what I will do. Finish the course, stay the course, you will see what I will do. I heard that vividly. And I said, but why you have me doing this? I don't think this is the course I'm supposed to be doing. I can switch to something else. I can study something else. I don't want to face these people again. And he had me go right back there after I quitted university a second time. And I thought to myself, I don't want to see this group of people. I don't want to be in this space. There must be something else for me to do. And the Lord sent me right back there. And there was a time I got so overwhelmed, I broke down and I went to a lecturer's office. I had this thing pent up, when tears are all over.
Yes, girl. Yes.
And then she said to me, how are you doing? There were bags under my eyes. It was dark around my eyes. I was just tired. You're not sleeping at night. You're not, because your mental space is just totally distorted. And the minute I opened my mouth to say how I was, it was an honest response. I broke down and I started snotting in this woman's office like it was them real dirty
Like
cry.
you were just waiting for someone to ask, how are you?
Waiting for somebody to ask, how are you?
Oh, wow.
And I broke down and I couldn't even get the words out. And she said something to me. She said, I sense and I understand what's happening. And you might think this is unusual, but you need to talk to somebody. And she wrote down a counselor's name. She dragged it on the table. She said, please talk to somebody. At that time, I started opening up to my mother, who's a counselor as well. I started talking with a lot of people around me who I didn't realize were mentors as well. And I cried a lot, I snorted a lot, but I needed to get the toxin. I needed to vomit.
Yeah.
Because I've been holding on to all that negativity for so many years. And in my mind, it had become who I thought I was. And I was not progressing. It was just a season of stagnancy, just going over the same thing over and over again, repeating cycles over and over again. And it was just terrible. And that's how, people want to know how I could see right through them. I've lived
1,000 lives.
I have lived. I have gone through seasons. And now when I see certain characteristics and certain displays, I would watch them.
But you've lived so that they don't have to go through it alone. And so they don't have to fall in the ditch that you've fallen and experience it for years without getting that help. And so sometimes I think things happen to us. Not that we're happy that it happened, but
it
now
was necessary.
It was necessary.
And the Lord saw that you were the right candidate. You would go through this. You have enough resilience. You have all that you need for godly life and good living. You have the tools that
suffering.
You need. Yes.
I don't like that part of the scripture, Rochelle.
But girl,
but it's
you
necessary for that
have what
pruning.
it takes. And the Lord said, I will take you through this season because you will now turn back and lend a hand to those who are in need. Because I do believe in these are the last days. And I think a lot of evil is becoming very rampant and the young people's mental health is under attack more than ever before. And I think there needs to be mentors in the space who can pull them out of that rut earlier. So I might have lamented for years in one space, but I think during that time there were so many lessons, so many nuggets, so much a wealth of wisdom that overtook me. And now I'm able to spot things and nip it in the bud immediately because I've walked this road before. Don't bring strippiness.
You know what it looks like.
I know what it looks like.
You know what it looks like. So Rochelle, you graduated. Bachelor's Medical Technology.
Yes.
You can flip the cap. You can shift the gong. You did it.
I did it.
And now here you are, as you said. God said, just finish. You finished. Now you are working in healthcare.
Yeah.
Tell us about that before you even transition to where you are now. How was that job before this, where you're at now?
So you're talking about my previous job?
Yes, as a medical lab technician.
Right. So I worked within the clinical field as a laboratory scientist for probably a little bit more than 6 years. And I worked during the interesting thing is you brought that up, but even while I was quitting and stopping it, I realized that during my time of trying to finish the University of Guyana, I never stopped working. I was always working. There was always a job. There was always something I'm volunteering for, always something I was doing, never. And so over the time, you can see that I've accumulated probably like 10 years of service as a healthcare worker. But when I was finished with UG or wrapping up that degree and stuff, I had like 6 years of experience. I didn't like what I was doing. As a medical technologist, the ideal thing for you to do, or the expectations that you end up in a laboratory, a clinical lab, you take specimen like blood and pee and poop and swabs from all parts of the body, and you're analyzing those samples, and then you are more of an aid to a medical doctor to help them to diagnose patients who come in. And that's all I did every day, all day. And I'm not saying that the scope of medical technologies is limited to that, but that's just what I did. And I really prayed for something. As I said, God, I need to engage with people. I need to impact people. I need to do something with people. And I remember one of my final years working there, a patient came in, a young girl, just like you, tall, very, very pretty. And she came to do an HIV test. And the sample came to me. And when I ran the sample, she was HIV positive. Jeez. And I remember later on, it's either the same day or the next day, I can't remember. She came back to the lab. And I saw her pacing the floor. And you can see that she's nervous because all the palms, she's rubbing her inner palms. She's pacing left and right. And you can see this worried, drooping look on her face. And I could see her through the glass, because the glass of the laboratory was full glass. Yeah. So I can see outside, but you can't see inside. And I realized that somebody now has to tell this young woman that she's HIV positive, but it's not me. My job is just to hand the sample. Oh, these are the results. And a year after that, that thing still bothered me. Like, where is she? Did she get the right counsel? Did anybody support her? Did anybody advise her medically what you need to be eating, what you need to be doing, what medications you need to be taking? Did anybody support her through the process? Did anybody speak to her from a psychological perspective, the impact that that type of news has on you? I never saw her back. I don't know where this young woman is to this day. And it was at that moment I said, I need to get out of this lab.
You're not making the impact that you want to make.
Making the impact that I know I should be. I need to get out of this space. And then I started to pursue my master's degree in healthcare management. And I did that because I wanted my language to change. I wanted to shift from just being a healthcare worker, somebody doing the day-to-day, running samples, doing the legwork. And I wanted to be in a space whereby my mind has evolved and my thinking and my capacity has increased. And I'm able to have conversations regarding change, conversations regarding leadership in healthcare, conversations regarding strategies that we can use to improve our engagements with patients. And so that master's degree really matured me as a professional, as an intellectual. It really matured me because now my database has increased. Now the knowledge that I had as a first degree owner, it's now different. And I can sit at a table and have an intellectual conversation and impose and insist that certain things be done to change the way we interact with patients.
And now you graduated with a master's.
You
took the step that you want to make that impact, and now here's an opportunity that presents itself.
Yes.
As an industrial hygienist.
Yeah.
Rochelle, on paper, you do not qualify. You do not qualify.
So let me talk that through now. So when I worked as a medical technologist in the laboratory and I wanted to come out because I'm dealing with samples that I didn't like the work that I was doing. I switched to food microbiology, which is within my field. But then that was the hardest job that I had, the most challenging. The environment was not conducive to my growth. People were very toxic. You know those types of work environment that you end up in. And I wanted to leave the day I walked in, but the Lord kept saying, stay right there. And then 6 months passed, I want to leave, stay right there. And then they had me do some trainings, and they had me do some things, and I'm accumulating all this experience, and at the time complaining, you know. And hear the Lord, stay right there.
Long suffering again. Long suffering, Rochelle. You're built for this.
So when I started my master's degree, my husband he's very tech savvy. He's on LinkedIn, he's on all the socials, because for a while I've been talking about my passion, what I really want to do. But in my mind, a job like this doesn't exist. But this is what I want to do anyway. You know, I want to. And he said, he's been listening. That's what that means, right? He said, babe, you need to check this out. And then when I checked it out, it was like vacancy for an industrial hygienist at ExxonMobil Guyana. These are this is the scope of the work. This is a job description. And I was reading through all of it. I was like, I could do this. I did this at that same place I was complaining.
That you were complaining, but it was the place where God was preparing you. That was your preparation ground.
Yes,
and preparation isn't comfortable.
No, it's not. The squeezing and the pruning is
not comfortable.
It's not. So I said, I can do this. I did this. I can do that. But when I read the degrees that they were asking for, mine was a medical technology degree, and they're asking for engineering, environmental. And I was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. And I'm going to sell myself for this interview, because the Lord had me sitting at this specific space for 2 years. Uncomfortable. And all of the experiences I've harnessed there is what was needed for the job. I just didn't have the degree they were asking for. And mind you, the role is very unique to Guyana. Like one of your producers were asking me, what do you do industrial hygiene? It's a good thing I asked, because I hadn't heard it before. It's very unique. But when I read the job description, I said, I've been doing these things. Some of these things I've been doing it. And I said, I'm going to shoot my shot. I don't have what you're asking me for in terms of degree. What you're asking me for, I don't have it. But I'm going to. Obedience, let me tell you something. Obedience.
And trusting where you can't trace.
Yes. Trusting God where you can't trace it. I applied for the job. They called me for an interview. I sat the interview. I got the job. I couldn't believe it. Let me tell you something, but between the time I sat the interview to when I got it, it was a couple of months. So I was like, okay, well, I guess they wouldn't call. I guess I didn't get it. At least it was a good experience.
You spoke about seasons. Mm-hmm. So there is the pruning season, the uncomfortable season, mm-hmm. and then there's a season where you apply, and then there's a waiting season. Girl, I love it for you. But now you're here and you are thriving. Mm-hmm. As we prepare to wrap up, tell us a little bit about just being in that environment and what it means for you and what you've been able to accomplish.
Right. So I've been working with ExxonMobil Guyana for the past 4 years as an industrial hygienist. And now I am the lead in country. And that is a promotion that we're talking about. So it means that I must be doing something right?
Absolutely.
I have also had the opportunity to stand as an ambassador for my country. So a lot of the STEM programs and community outreach and school programs that you see ExxonMobil involved in, I play a pivotal role in being a part of that engagement and ensuring that the public is well aware of what we do, why we're doing it, and how it impacts them as young people, as people of the nation. That's the exciting part about what I do. My role as an industrial hygienist, it's all about people. People first, engaging with people every day, educating people, building programs to protect people. It's all about people.
Right where you want it to be.
Right where I want it to be. And in retrospect, reflecting on, the whole long journey that we talked through just now to where I am now, I don't only come with a master's degree in healthcare management and a bachelor's degree in medical technologies and a whole bunch of certificates in the industrial hygiene scope, but I now come with a wealth of experience that when I lead from an empathetic space. I lead from a knowledgeable space, an experienced space. I lead from a space of wisdom, and all of the experience I've harnessed over time, the seasons that I've gone through. I can now empathize with people and lead from a space of I'm advising because I know what this feels like, right? And it has really shaped who I am as a leader.
Multiple FPSOs, drill ships, and support vessels. And this is just the beginning. Life offshore has become a reality for many Guyanese in the oil and gas industry. But in the past, we had to travel abroad to complete the necessary offshore survival training. Now, the training is available right here in Georgetown. I'm getting the skills I need and building the career I've always wanted. I'm Max, and this is what's possible.
Learn more about Max's story and how ExxonMobil's investments are benefiting thousands of Guyanese like him at www.exxonmobil.com/whatispossible.
Finally, Rochelle, you shared so much with us, your challenges, failing forward, your successes, your seasons, and I know that there are young women who are going through UG. There are women in business and entrepreneurship in the workplace who have experienced what you've experienced, but some of them do not believe that they can get out. Their ambition, they need something to fuel them. Like, girl, just get up. You can do it. What would you say to them? Just look to the...
Yes, I love that question. We talked about seasons before and how it plays a pivotal role in who we become in life. Seasons are very important. There is a time and there is a season for everything. And sometimes we try to mix and mingle. And sometimes we don't realize that you are putting yourself in a difficult situation by just the things you choose to prioritize. Finding somebody to advise and guide you, finding mentors and having mentors in your space that you can bounce ideas off of, share information with, even vent a little on things that you're going through that you don't quite understand. Finding somebody to talk to is very, very critical. Take the seasons as they come. If this is a season for study. If this is a season of acquiring education and trying to uplift yourself as a person, let that be the focus. Seasons are critical, and there's a time and a space for everything. There's a time for relationships, there's a time for friendships, there's seasons, different seasons in life, and take that and journal. Because sometimes we don't see the progress that we're making until you look back on page 1 of your journal and realize, wait, this is where I was at mentally. This is what I was thinking. This is where I was at. And so you journal every day. Journal positive things. And so sometimes that imposter syndrome that we talk about, let me tell you something, negative thoughts can overwhelm you. Write them down on one side. And just talk. For me, I read the word a lot. So I write about what God says about me and what I'm able to do through Him. And I use that to combat every negative thought. Whatever positive thoughts you can think of yourself, use it to combat those negative thoughts. Sometimes it means literally writing it down so that you can read it and soak it in mentally, right? So journaling has helped a lot. And then you go back on page 1, see where you've come from. And that fuels you, that keeps you going.
Rochelle, I want to say thank you so much. I think this conversation was so necessary, and I want to thank you for stopping by, for chatting with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was an absolute pleasure, and
always a pleasure talking with you.
No, girl. So thank you so much, and I wish you so much success in everything that you stretch forth your hands for you to do. You're saying you're proud of me. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
I am so proud of you. So thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you for having me.
You've heard it there from our guest, Rochelle Maxius Benn, Industrial Hygienist at ExxonMobil Guyana. And I know that you took something away from this conversation, but I want to implore, do not keep it to yourself, because there might be someone within your community who can surely benefit from a nugget that was shared during this episode. So if you're going to reshare it on your socials, just use the hashtag FuelHer Energy Podcast. Share your key takeaways within the comment section, and I'm happy to join you next week, same time, same place. I'm your host, Jamicia, saying thank you so much and be safe. Bye-bye.